First of all, China's no threat at all to American democracy, and it's no threat at all to American security. China is not going to war with the United States. China could not defeat the United States. Chinese society has its kids in American schools. They like America. There's no animosity. What China has done that has so made the United States crazy is that China's been successful. That's all. There's nothing more to it. I've been going to China now for 43 years, many times a year, many of these years. And I've watched China grow from poverty to success. They have worked hard. Sometimes you would actually go and go down a road and see construction work going on at midnight because it's round the clock, 7 days a week, 24/7, because China worked really hard to pull itself out of poverty.
Right.
China does it. First of all, it could never win a war or defeat the United States. The whole idea is preposterous. China can't project power across the Pacific. Right. The only thing China could do is have a nuclear war with the United States in which the whole world ends. There's no way that China can defeat the United States. So the whole idea is nuts. Second, there's no even the slightest indication that China wants to do that.
Right.
What China wants is for the United States, stop bullying us. China's surrounded by U.S. military forces in Japan, in Korea, in the Philippines, throughout Southeast Asia. China is vulnerable to the U.S. putting so-called chokeholds on China's sea lanes, because China depends on the South China Sea, the narrow straits of Malacca, which is in Southeast Asia in the Indian Ocean. And the United States talks openly about these being choke points.
Right.
We could stop the flow of energy to China. We could stop the flow of food imports to China. And the United States, of course, is playing the Taiwan card. Taiwan is a part of China. Interestingly, the Taiwanese say so. The Republic of Taiwan says so. The People's Republic of China says so. They disagree about who should run the place because they had a civil war going back to the 1940s. But both of them said, yes, this is one China.
Right.
And when we recognize China, the People's Republic of China, we adopt the one China policy. But what does the United States do? It's sending billions of dollars of weapons to Taiwan now. Can you imagine if China said, we're going to arm the state of Tennessee? And the United States says, no, please don't do that. That's part of the United States. No, we're going to arm the state of Tennessee because they like us. Maybe someday, who knows, they'll be an ally of ours and so forth. We have a really important company in Tennessee. This is what we're doing.
Right.
It's crazy. By the way, it's crazy for Taiwan to fall into this. My advice to Taiwan is don't become the next Ukraine. In other words, the next place of a war between superpowers that takes place on your territory. By the way, I said to the Ukrainians, don't become the next Afghanistan. I've seen this movie too often. And I told the Ukrainians, you will be destroyed. Not by Russia, but by the United States. They will tell you, fight on, fight on, fight on. And I often quote Henry Kissinger's quip when he said, to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend of the United States is fatal. And this is applying to Ukraine, but I say it to my friends in Taiwan. Don't play games.
Right.
Don't play games. Don't think the United States is going to be able to save you. It's no way. But it could destroy you if a war breaks out. And so don't take weapons from the U.S. That's not how to get security. That's how to end up in a war.
Right. How do you feel with this rising rhetoric from the U.S. government that is saying, for example, a lot of very hardcore Republicans have said, we need to shift away from strategic ambiguity, shift to strategic clarity. Do you feel that that is just immediately provocation? I mean, is that really going to be the result of, the start of this next war?
Well, if they say, yes, we're going to defend Taiwan in a war, and then the Taiwanese would be so completely reckless and naive as to declare independence, which some probably would want to do, that's a great, brilliant way to start World War III.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, it's unbelievable how irresponsible people in Washington are, especially Congress, but not just Congress. We're seeing it everywhere. Talk of war as if it's nothing. What a game. Against a nuclear superpower with 4 times our population in their neighborhood, after all. When everyone knows, by the way, what's an aircraft carrier going to do chugging along in the ocean when China has hypersonic missiles? Well, everyone knows that this makes no sense at all. But the bravado, the recklessness of it is absolutely stunning. And we see all over the place, like in the New York Times, a recent story about the U.S. preparing for war with China. Are you kidding? Mm-hmm. And that story didn't question it at all. I would say it's insane, this whole concept. Then we have the U.S. Navy putting out its plans, saying we have to be ready for war with China by 2027. Oh my God, are there any adults anywhere left? Right. Is this are they playing Risk? Are they playing some video game?
Right.
Or are they just playing with our lives with abandon?
Professor Sachs, I think we have, a lot of unqualified people that just don't have that extensive knowledge about China. And it's interesting because they're certainly going down this road of manufacturing consent, right? Every day, China's presented in a very negative light in our media. It's very different when you're on the ground. I mean, you've been going for 43 years. You've seen better than anybody that amazing transition that China's done. But also, I think when you look at it from an economic perspective, our economies are just so intertwined. And this is something I constantly say is, our American economy, our American way of life really depends on China. And I think when you talk to more people, businessmen that really understand how the world works, I think you get a much different take on China. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And our economy depends on China. Their economy depends on us, not to every dollar or yuan, but for our prosperity. This has been a tremendously beneficial two-way trade. Right. By the way, the first principle of international economics, which I have taught for 44 years, is mutual gain. Yeah. Trade is not about one side winning and the other side losing. That's how generals think. But economists say trade is about mutual gain. We get something, you get something.
Correct.
And the United States has overall been enriched by China's rise. Now, what's true also about trade is that there are losers from trade in the first instance, in the sense that if you're in a factory competing directly with a highly efficient, low-cost Chinese exporter who's able to encroach in your market, you may lose your job, your wage may go down, and so forth. 2 points about that. One, somewhere else in the United States, there's a huge winner. There's someone who's exporting to China. There's all of us as consumers, because we're able to get our Apple phones or just about anything else that we have that has efficient Chinese production in it. So we're winning that way. Our standard of life and our quality of life has gone up. Now, the principle of international trade is that the winners win more than the losers lose, because there's a net gain for both societies. But what is also true is if our society is really stingy, so the winners pocket their winning and the losers are left in their own, you're going to have a disgruntled people. in the losing areas. And in our case, in the United States, the U.S. overall has been a huge beneficiary of trade with China. And by the way, I said this in California recently, and they were very surprised to hear this because no one talks like that.
Right.
I said, are you kidding? You've been enriched. You're the IT center of the world, but you don't produce things. China produces your goods and gives incredible profits to your design, like NVIDIA, of course. Right. There are some losers, and they turn out to be the swing states right now. So Trump in 2016 ran on this anti-China mode and carried some Midwestern states. And the Democrats, not being very creative, very honest, very smart in general, that's true of both our political parties, they said, oh, well, Trump did that, we better follow the same. So Biden became protectionist the same way. Right. And nobody explained basic truths to the American people. Trade is good, but, people that are hurting should be helped with retraining, with new education, with the new job startups, with other things that a normal government would do, not just leaving people to scramble with their own devices. But we don't talk about any of that. We just fake it saying, well, the only thing about China is that some people in Ohio lost their jobs. What about all the rest of the country? Right. Even people in Ohio. So if we were a little less cruel to those who suffer an adverse consequence, say, from import competition, we would be honest to also say, look at how our country as a whole have gained. How many companies have found huge markets in China? How many companies produce in China? How many companies are engaged with China in supply chains? That's what honesty would be. We don't have it in our politics.
Yeah. Professor Sachs, thank you so much. I have one last question. As we look toward to 2025 and we see multiple conflicts around the world, are you optimistic that the world is going to be better a year or two from now? Are you worried about the future? What is your personal feelings towards the future of our world?
Well, I'm hugely worried. I'm hugely worried about escalation of war. I'm hugely worried about this constant drumbeat of war. I'm hugely worried about the lies that are told about why these wars exist. Oh, well, Putin's a madman, or Hamas is the sole cause, instead of really understanding the root causes and therefore the real solutions. So I'm very worried. We will have a new administration. There's always a chance that they will do better. I think it's our responsibility to tell them we do not want to perish in a nuclear war. We do not want more war. We want the wars to stop. We want diplomacy as solutions. We don't want fear mongering, and we don't want warmongering. And that's true no matter who is president.